Now, I would like to welcome the chairperson for the third session, Dr. T. Subita, Assistant Professor of English, Nesamani Memorial Christian College, Marthandam. She is an knowledgeable teacher having special interactive skills with students. Her expertise has been sought out after by educational institutions. Her scholarly articles in various journals have been referred much. Her guidance has helped students both in academic and extracurricular activities. We have such an eminent person as a chair of this session. I hand over the session to you, ma'am. Please take over the session.
Good afternoon and welcome you all for once again to the third session of today's paper reading. And a bit of instruction before beginning. All the presenters, be conscious about your time and just use only the stipulated time, just not exceed the time that given, like less than 10 minutes. Okay, so be conscious and time constraint. And we'll go to the first presenter of the session. The first presenter is Dr. Neha Arora, Assistant Professor of English, Central University of Rajasthan, India. And her paper title is very interesting, it sounds, that Jal Jungle Jameen, Reading the Eco War in Mailama, the life of a tribal eco warrior. Jal Jungle Jameen, reading of Eco War in Mailama, the life of a tribal eco warrior. So now you
Thank you.
can start your presentation, ma'am.
Thank you. Am I audible, ma'am? Just want to.
Yes, very much
Okay.
audible.
Thank you. So, a very good afternoon to each one of us, each one of you. And as the chair has said that we need to maintain the time limit, so I will just quickly start sharing my screen. And instead of explaining each and every slide, I will just quickly run through the presentation and try to explain what I have, I've tried to do in my presentation. I think it's coming up. Yeah. Ma'am, is the presentation visible? Uh, hello? Hello? Can anyone tell me, is the presentation visible?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am,
it
it
is
is
visible.
visible.
Okay. Thank you, thank you. So the title, as ma'am read out, is Jal Jungle Zameen, Reading the Eco War in Myanmar, the life of a tribal eco warrior. So the focus of my talk is about the destructive practices that go on in the name of development, the ecological hazards that we face, and also I'll touch upon the emergence of environmental justice writing. My work is based on a life narrative of an ordinary illiterate woman, Mayanamma, who became a hero for her community to protect the natural resource that is water. Uh, yeah, ma'am? Hello? Okay. Shall I go ahead, ma'am? There was some.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the work elaborates on the ill effects of over commercialization and over exploitation of water, and it also talks about it mainly talks about the struggle and eventually the victory of the local people or the tribals of Plachumada over the giant multinational company Coca-Cola. So this is just a brief about my presentation. Uh, I will not read out the entire thing what the environmentalist Vandana Shiva talks about, but her main emphasis is on the commercialization that has set in and that is disrupting the balance of the natural resources and the connection between the human beings and the natural resources is completely disrupted. So actually, protecting of natural resources is when I'm talking about the tribals, their mantra is everything is connected. For them, a home is not. I will explain in the slides to come. Home is not something a concrete structure of four walls and a ceiling. Home for them is environment. So for them, it's actually everything is connected, and that is why I've titled my presentation Jal Jungle Zameen. So preserving nature for them is preserving community, and preserving community means preserving cultural history. So it's not merely question of survival that we talk about when we discuss the tribal literature. These are the present threats we all are well aware of, that with the, in the name of progress, development, blah blah, actually the balance between human and environment is completely disrupted, as I said before. And we talk about commercialization also, and over exploitation of natural resources, which I have termed pseudo development, because for me it's not development. And we'll see how this work talks about why we talk about Plachimada, why we are talking about water and right to water, etc., etc. So Plachimada, became came into news for the struggle. It actually started against the world's most well-known brand, Coca-Cola, and we see a binary. On one hand, we have the Adivasis, which are the symbol, who are the symbol of primitiveness and backwardness. This is not what I believe, but this is, I've just written in quotes because this is the general understanding, that Adivasis or tribals are primitive people, they are backward people. And on the other hand, we have this Coca-Cola, which is the symbol of US imperialism, the political power, and how these tribal people, they waged a war against this MNC for their rights. This is the book that I'm talking about, Mayalama, and this is, as I said, that it has entered into the domain of international environmental justice writing. And Mayalama, this book talks about globalization and the ill effects of globalization. It also talks about the widening socioeconomic inequalities, and also about the rising ecological burdens that are borne by the marginalized poor. Because although I'll be talking about Plachimada, but we can refer to a number of examples across India. I'm just restricting myself to India, where we can see that in the name of development, whether they would promise that multi-storied buildings would come up, you'll get employment, etc., etc., and that's why we want your land. And poor tribals, they have to give in, they surrender to the false promises of these corporate leaders and also some of the political leaders, because it's a complete nexus that works on. I see this work as a very important text, because here the subalterns are in fact indeed speaking up. They are resisting to the hegemonic mainstream narrative discourses, and they are, as I said, that they waged a war against globalization. This is also the title of the work, Eco Warrior. This is these days we are talking about Corona warriors, but Mayalama was the Eco Warrior, because as I said, that she became a name because of this because she led this movement, and it's just her concern for the basic rights of her people. It's not the individual rights, but the basic rights of her community, of her people, that made her wage a war, lead the struggle, and hence she became a hero, a warrior. I'm not talking about all these things. She questions, and that's why, although she's no more with us, but deliberately I have written who is Mayalama, because the fight that she began continues still. And although she was illiterate, but she could well see the lopsided development, and she could well see the ill effects that these things would lead to. And as I've written, her activism foregrounds the threats faced by most tribal societies in India. It's not just the Plachimada, but see, it's more than health and other things. It's the loss of local knowledge. As I said, that preserving nature or preserving environment is preserving a community, preserving cultural history. So if these tribals are displaced from their lands, it would entail loss of local knowledge, loss of identity, and with the displacement, because they are compelled to leave their places and move to look for livelihood to some other places. Plachimada, actually, why I'm talking about, because although it is the rice bowl of Kerala, but the major dependency of the people there is on agriculture, which in turn is dependent on groundwater. And we can just imagine what would happen if that groundwater is not available. So this is something which happened with the coming of the Coca-Cola plant in Plachimada, when the plant started using the groundwater of Plachimada, and in fact, as a result, the people over there uh, uh, couldn't get water for their daily needs. Forget about agriculture. So this is I'm not reading all these things. This is just a quick overview what happened when Coca-Cola arrived in Plachimada, and how in 1999, in a small area, 38-acre plot, it started its manufacturing. Um, these are just the factual details that I have written in my slides to make you people aware of how the problems were planted, and it was not just the doing of the MNCs or the corporate leaders, but also some political leaders were involved. And because of this, as I've written, problems were planted. Uh, the natives started getting dirty water, the water level started receding, and the sludge was, we could see that the sludge was there everywhere. So why we are talking, because this conference is on fourth world literature, and it is necessary to address the issues of the fourth world people. Here I'm talking about the tribals. uh, and the very pertinent question that comes up to us is, what is superior? What is more superior, water for survival or water for profit? So on one hand, tribals waged the war for the rights of survival, water for survival, and on the other hand, we had those corporate leaders who only were money minded, and they just think only to make how to make money. So there were many complaints that were lodged against Coca-Cola before the actual agitation started. So these were the problems that the Adivasis over there, they were facing, the health hazards, as I said, and also the effect on agriculture. So these were the unethical practices. I've just given pictures also of some of the pictures I've taken from internet to show what kind of agitation started. We can just read in this slide where it is written, water is our birthright, who is denying it to us? So all these things began, and as I said, that impact of the Coca-Cola plant was not just on health and environment, but also, I've mentioned, socioeconomic impacts, where the Adivasis were compelled to migrate, and everything gets affected. So its environment, its health, its culture, everything gets affected. uh, okay, so these are some of the pics that I have taken. Coca-Colanization. The moment I saw this sub-theme in the brochure, I thought that let me just talk about this Coca-Colanization. So, ma'am, just 2 minutes. I can just quickly wind it up.
Okay, ma'am, make it fast. Okay.
Yeah, I'll just, this is just the timeline that
Yes,
has
ma'am.
given.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I'll not go through all the slides. So these are the timelines when and when all these movements, when this movement started, 22nd April 2002, and I've written and I've highlighted in red the major events that happened, and something that began in 2002. We can see it is still continuing. So 2000 till 2016, I have given the detail. So just to wind up, we need to, because when we are talking about fourth world, we need to talk about survival. And these are the lines that I've taken from the book, where my Lama writes that our air, water, and soil belong to us alone. We will always fight against those who try to destroy them. And also, the kings of the forest have now been brought low. So again, how these subalterns are not ready to surrender or give in to the powerful, to the people to the dominant. So thanks to all these people, that eventually the plant and the Coca-Cola plant was eventually asked to shut down, and quickly, I'll just come to the last slide of my presentation. Why this book I found very, very relevant, because it is not just a chronicle of the life narrative of a woman belonging to the voiceless subaltern community, but also because it foregrounds the danger of myopic, greed-driven, and ecologically destructive industrial ventures. We need to be very, very careful about all these things. And also because the indigenous communities have finally begun to say no to consumerism, and also because they have started asserting for their rights to the land, air, and water. So, just to conclude, uh, when they say that this is a Pachimada declaration that I have quoted, water is not a private property, it is a common resource for the sustenance of all. The right to conserve, use, and manage water is fully vested with the local community. So this was the Pachimada declaration, and I end my presentation with this quote that we need to understand that we need development, but not development that spells destruction. So thank you so very much. I tried to, sum up everything in just few minutes. I know we have time constraint. Thank you
Okay,
so
ma'am.
much.
It's a wonderful presentation. You have given a very, very beautiful sketch or mapped the risk of the environmental activism that has been playing in Kerala, particularly with reference to Mailamma's The Life of the Tribal Eco Warrior. And we have also the rhetoric realities of consumption, globalization, and the widening socio-economic inequalities that has been rising, right? So, and also increasing the burdens of the marginalized poor. So,
Yeah.
it was really it was a very wonderful presentation. And
Thank you so
like
much.
participants, if you have any questions against this, if you have any questions, you can make it now. Yes, I have got on clarification. Shall I?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
We
ma'am,
have
please.
we have just mentioned about this water war in Kerala. Do you think that what water war is only in Kerala state? Don't
No,
other
no,
states?
ma'am. There are other states also, and I am coming. Like I'm working in Rajasthan, so there are movements in Rajasthan also that are working. Like I'm forgetting. I think I just mentioned in the slide, but I'm just forgetting the things right now. But the thing starts with K. So there are things that are, and there are such movements. Regarding water that are happening in Rajasthan as well, and some in Assam we have this dam thing. So we are, that's why I said that I've taken just one example, but we can just refer to many other such incidents happening across India where the tribals are getting affected, mainly the tribals are getting affected. And that's why I deliberately titled Jal Jungle Zameen. It's not just the water, it's
Fire,
everything that has.
forest. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. So there are like it's a really it's an interesting paper, and I have read many papers related to eco terrorism, environmental terrorism, and so many papers. These are the testimonies of the sub people, right? So it's really good. Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much for your presentation.
Thank
We'll move on to the second paper presenter of this particular session, and that is Esther Jennifer, Assistant Professor of Department of English, Tirunangal Nada College, Chennai. Esther Jennifer, and her title is Oppression and Regression Imposed on the Life of Women in Alice Walker's The Third Life of Copeland. So, are you ready, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Shall
Okay,
I
so you
start?
can go ahead. Yes, very much you can start.
Thank you so much. A cheerful evening to one and all. I'm sorry, we are working, so I'm still at college, so that's the reason that I'm here. And this topic that I've chosen is like the oppression and the regression that is imposed on the life of women. We see that most of the time women are called as the weaker sex, even though we are psychologically strong. But even then it is, we are called that way, and there is a male dominance that we see in the society. So here Alice Walker's very first novel, The Third Life of Grant Copeland. So I'm just trying to talk about the oppression that the women face there. As women, right from the early age, we see that we have a society that is dominated by a lot of things that does not allow women to come up in life. We have a lot of bonds right from the time that we are born. So here also we see that Alice Walker talks about, even though we have a lot of racism, fear, and a lot of other social inhibitions, we see that people try to come up, and that is also inhibited. So in this novel that we see that Grange Copeland, he's a sharecropper, and he's an ordinary husband who keeps beating his wife, who keeps suppressing her um, happiness, and he also goes to the extent of having an extramarital affair with a prostitute. So how all these situations are bringing down or the woman's life, that's what we see here. So women become the victim of injustice, and we see that the response that we have and all these things, we are treated so cruelly, and women expect love which is not given to them, and in turn they are suppressed. So here we see that the abuse begins right from the family, okay, and whatever pressure the men have, they try to impose it on the women, or whatever pressure they find outside, they're trying to impose it on the women in the family. So the family life becomes a hell here, and this abuse becomes like he's a drunkard, and he physically also assaults her, and he is not able to face his problem. When Mr. Grange Copeland is not able to face his issues, and that's why he is trying to put it over to the on the women. And we see that this follows to the next generation also. It is followed by his son, who is also victimizing his wife, and this continues on. So Josie, who is the character of the extramarital affair, she also faces similar experiences. That's what we see. And Ruth, who is the granddaughter of Grange Copeland, she is the one who is also has the who has been so lucky enough, because Grange Copeland has turned over a new leaf, and that is the reason that she is able to be not to be victimized. And we see that Brownfield also is victimized, looking at the same way the father was living. So we find that this suppression continues. Even now we see, even in Afghanistan, where the schools are closed for the girl children, but the schools for the boys, it continues to go on. Although we know that there is a lot of problem, violence that's going on, even then it is so. So here we see that this turning, when a man turns over a new leaf, the entire scenario changes. So he was able to give a much better and a good opportunity for his granddaughter Ruth, and whatever bitterness he underwent was not in turn given to her. So it has taken 2 generations to realize that. So what I would say is that we know that the plight of women, even though all these years we have so much of technology, we have come up, we are so broad-minded, we say, but even then, in spite of all that, there is some hitches, something that's going on here and there. So seeing the father, the next generation, that is Brownfield, also continues that, and he has to be retorted, or he has to be taught in a very harsh way by his father. So that's what we see here, and it is very much essential that we know that we have to put ourselves in another person's shoes before trying to harm them or before we try to suppress them. Each one has their own individuality. Each one has their own, creativity and their own ambitions in life. Just because they are a woman, it doesn't mean that you have to suppress them. That's what we see here. And the life of Margaret was a total failure, or she had a very sad life. But then her life was a lesson, and we see that Grange Copeland was able to move out. The final twist that Mem's youngest daughter, that is Ruth, had the opportunity not to be a victim like her mother or her grandmother. Uh, we see that Brownfield, following the footsteps of his father, also was a very gruesome husband, and we see that he kills his wife. And finally, a very happy ending for the entire family. That's what we see here. So the women's life largely depends on men, how they handle them and how they are able to manage. So that's what we are able to see here, this oppression and regression. Every women are facing in some point or the other in life. So we here see that this social oppression has played a very major havoc in killing the ambitions and dreams of people, especially women. And the role of every parent is to knit the family together. The family is a very good bond, and if the family stays together, then the women in the family will be able to achieve much better things in life. So that's what we see. And the highlight of this novel is that Grange is turning over a new leaf, and he was able to understand the plight of women and the need to reciprocate love and the affection that is showered by the women in the family has to be reciprocated. Only then a good family life, and on the whole, the women's life will be a much better one on this earth.
I think she has left. Poor connectivity, I think. Yes, her presentation was really good, and she has given a beautiful portrayal of the present scenario of women community. Right? Okay, she's starting. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so it's really a good presentation, and that was Alice Walker's first novel, as she has mentioned, and she has published this at a very early age, that is at a 26th age. And women always struggle and we battle for everything. Okay, so it's a continuous process. There is a plight always. There's a struggle. We always been discriminated, even in our family, right? So Black women, there's no words to express their right struggles for their family. Okay, so like facing sexual and racial oppression. So her paper was oppression and regression imposed on the life of women in Al. Okay, dear participants, right. So, we will now move on to the next presenter, the third one, Raman Goswami. He is a scholar, Magad University, Bodh Gaya, Bihar, and his paper press is titled as Tale of the Oppressed, Mahashweta Dev's Infants in Her Short Stories. Tale of the Oppressed, Mahashweta Dev's Infants in Her Short Stories. So now let's listen to him.
Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes, yes, you are very much audible.
Honorable Chairperson, respected organizer, of today a paper and which is entitled as The Tale of Oppressed Shota Devi, Infants in Her Short Stories. In the beginning, I want to quote from a Bengali poem. No garment to cover the nakedness of the body, no bed to sleep. Life became disabled, only waiting for escape. Mahashweta Devi is one of these writers who have been writing for the tribal and dispossessed. She is one of the few writers who have an unflinching dedication and ardor for the underprivileged people. Devi is a scholarly, aware writer who writes approximately the maximum marginalized studies paper. This paper is a try to show the hypocrisy of the so referred to as civilized human beings who have grabbed all of the sources and possibilities and feature disposed of a big phase of society and feature compelled them within inside the nation of abject poverty and deprivation. Her short story, Sisu, in Hindi, is a hair elevating story of hunger, wherein human beings turn out to be sunk to pygmies, starvation, malnutrition over years. Mahashweta Devi describes the tribal village, wherein those human beings live as a place of extreme poverty and scarcity. Here, dehumanized because of years of forget about the paucity of sources. The bodies of the infants are not developed. They had been born and taken up in hunger. They have visible rise with the only that means in their lifestyles in post-colonial India. Mahashweta Devi's powerful satiric fiction has received her popularity within the shape of Sahitya Academy and Jnanpith Award, the very best prize in India in 1996. A social activist, she had spent many of her life in tribal or Adivasi people, and she was awarded Padma Shri and Magsaysay, the Asian equal of the Nobel Prize in 1997. Her literary masterpieces, among others, encompasses Jhansiর রানী, হাজার চৌরাশির মা, রুদালি, অগ্নিগর্ভা, চটিমুন্ডা ও তীর, অরণ্যের অধিকার, and memories like Draupadi, Breast Giver, Doloti, the Bountiful, Sri Sri Ganesh Mohima, etc. In all her stories, we find a struggle only for rise in Santal or Adivasi language that we I freedom. And for profound humanism, deep-seated love for the struggling humanity lies on the middle of Mahashweta Devi's philosophy of life. In all her writing, she attempts to depict the lives of the common men and girls, especially the Adivasi humans, just like the Santals, the Ludhaj, the Sabars, and the mundas, the simple joys and sorrows of their life. Struggling the object he brings to his me the are I primarily totally true, no longer picture. In addition, the written those testimonies, if they get below the truth and meaning of those testimonies and experience as the author feels, so as to be praised enough. Most of the testimonies in bitter soil may be interpreted at a symbolic level. Little ones or Shishu often will not able to develop a from overbearing presence of the big brother. Our memories take us to the roots of the hassle of complete lack of awareness at the part of the civilized, which makes the situation deeply ironic. This is also the motivation of his story, The Little Ones of Shishu, where he exposes the sort of machine that keeps the tribal locked in age-old cycle of poverty, starvation, and disease. Of course, the starvation Agarians are savagely indignant at a machine below, which is for and they may be the tree evidence that is located in the Rachi as a humble place in which him in the yes, and poverty. In this story of service, where it is appointed to see in the mindset he had of the manner the tribal live, and the stark fact which he faces. He had formed a few ideas from the Adivasi movies that making a song is a complete and partial life of the Adivasi. Nothing he involved understand real of that's what shows who can't visuals to anti. Project Hunger in all stories is even as a mystery. It comes out in a story narrated to relaxation officers that each time the of Adivasi to be barrier on our and of the page. Now the villagers begin believing that there is a supernatural activity that turns absolutely each person looking whosoever attempts to return back within sight the manner of the tribal stealing again. Keeping time in mind, the whole scene shows Mahashota Devi's consummate ability in depicting the horror and the sheer incapacity of relaxation in dealing with as much as his fear than he is. Here, horrible and our body at the moment
Try to conclude, Mr. Raman.
up to my there is the half code of such one who nevertheless live in bondage because it is criminal. Our government of Act in 1959 for I have to conclude from Bhagavad to quote that Sukedu Abhavo Jayajapo Tata Judhayo Jujusho Noibo Papamo Abhayasai. That means when there is the lack of food, the children must be told not to get hyper excited if they gain something and not to be in deep sorrow when they miss something. Thank you, ma'am. It is over to you.
Okay, Mr. Raman. It was a cool presentation, and yeah, made a lot of references. But the problem is we had got some trouble in getting you clearly because there are some network problem, I think. And you have talked about the suppressed infants. So, is he very specific about any or a male or female child, infants in general, or particularly as Mahashri Radev has. Hello, Radev?
Yes, ma'am. Yes.
Ah, is he? Is she specific in like male children or female children? You talked in general, or breast infant?
Okay, ma'am.
Did you get me? Did you get me?
No, no, I am not hearing you. Please repeat again.
Yes, you have talked about the oppressed infants, right? So the affected,
Yes.
children or infants of the indigenous people, right? They are undergoing
Yes.
complex or intense struggle, they are defenseless, right? People all through the world, all through the map. And are you very
Yes.
particular about male children or female children?
No, ma'am. Children had no sexes.
Whom
They are both male
is
and
there any
female.
specific concentration? Yes, yes. Tell me. I think you didn't get me. I think. Okay, it's not a problem at all. Okay, it's a very good presentation. He was very cool in doing his presentation. Thank you, Mr. Raman. And next
Thank you,
we'll
ma'am.
move on to the next participant, next paper presenter is Dheeraj M. Ambade, Assistant Professor and Head, Department of English Language and Literature, Anna Sahib Gundawar College, Nagpur, Maharashtra. So now it's your time to give your presentation. And his title is, it's very interesting, and McDonaldization in India, transforming citizens into hybrid customers. Now
Thank you, ma'am.
you can do it, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much, ma'am. I would like to share my
Okay.
presentation here. A window. Just a moment. Yeah. Is it on the screen now? Is it on the screen now? Am I
The
audible?
screen is there, but you're audible. The screen is there, but nothing is presented to you. We get a blank screen.
Oh, just a minute. I don't know what happened to it, but let me sort it out. Just a minute, ma'am. Just a moment, and then
Okay.
I try to do that. Screen is already there, but then it's not visible.
Yeah, screen is there, but
Okay, still it is not there. I don't
still
know
not
what
there,
happened.
sir.
Yeah,
It's blank
what can be done? Okay.
You just go with your presentation, sir.
Oh, fine, fine. That can be done.
Doesn't mind of
Sure,
the slide.
sure, sure,
Okay.
sure. Okay, good evening, everyone, respected chairperson and my fellow beings. The topic of my research is McDonaldization in India, transforming citizens into hybrid customers. As we are all aware about the McDonaldization process. Basically, it's a corporate globalization process which has influenced not only Indian culinary culture and taste, but also social and economic process, converting people into customers. It quickly gained acceptability and popularity of its project among most Indians, particularly among middle class youth. Because of its aggressive promotion and widespread appeal, individual adoption of a project is one of the most potent strategies which have been the hallmark of McDonaldization process in India. The widespread expansion of McDonald's, Domino's, Pizza Hut's, Coffee Days, KFC, Subway, Cadbury, and other foreign corporations in India show how Indians, corporations, and customers to the greater extent have been
Hello.
McDonaldized.
Sorry
Yeah,
for the disturbance.
yeah,
Dheeraj sir.
yeah,
Dheeraj sir,
yeah,
you have
please.
presented your screen, but you are now you have not opened your presentation.
It was open, but I
Minimize
don't know what.
the
Oh, okay, sorry. Yes, please
no.
suggest.
Open your PPT presentation right away.
Yeah, it is open.
Select the slide.
You have presented the screen. Now go to the other tab, presentation tab.
Presentation tab. Can you suggest me how to do that?
No, in your computer, when you open PPT
Yeah, the file is
presentation,
on.
na?
Yeah.
Open a PPT presentation in your computer. It will, you'll be able to see it. You have
Now?
already presented your screen.
Okay, are you able to see it now?
No. There's only white screen. White screen
No,
only.
Now?
not a problem, sir.
We're not able to see.
Okay, anyway, no issue. No doubt.
You continue, sir.
Yeah, please.
Okay. Now it is
Ah.
visible, sir. Now it is visible.
Now the PPT is visible.
What the
PPT is visible or not?
no, it isn't.
Okay, it's okay. Even if that is not visible.
no.
It's okay. It's okay. No issue.
So go on with
Perhaps,
your
yeah,
presentation.
I missed something. Perhaps. Okay. The paper thus looks into how McDonaldization as a process influenced consumer culture and fostered mutual acceptance for their products, effectively turning citizens into clients. The keywords are McDonaldization, consumer culture, hybridity, fast food, and consumerism. The paper is quite lengthy, so I would cut it short and briefly move to hybridity concept. Now, George Ritzer coined the term McDonaldization to describe how more and more of our life is being run like a fast food restaurant. Okay. It has become a widely used term for the globalization of consumer culture. It is the principle by which fast food restaurants are coming to dominate more sectors not only of America but the entire world. McDonaldization is the process through which the concept of the extremely successful and revolutionary fast food restaurants come to dominate a growing number of sectors of American society, as well as the increasing number of other societies across the nation. It is significant. McDonald is significant not only as a model for the McDonaldization process and as a business model, but also as a cultural icon. It is not only found in the United States, but increasingly around the world. The mode of its operation becomes a pattern of social operations and, to a large extent, a modernization symbol. It is not one of occurrence, but a representation of long-term structural change in production, consumption, and management. The process suggests, in a pejorative manner, that something is overly commercialized and standardized. Thus, it is a blueprint for the organization of many social enterprises. It is occupying more space and time, turning into a model that many organizations follow. Based on the ideas of expansionism and rationalization of irrationality, the McDonaldization thesis, its invasion and spread in many areas have pushed others to dominate other sectors. It affects not only the restaurant business but also virtually every other aspects of society. McDonaldization has shown every sign of being an inexorable process, sweeping through seemingly impervious institutions and regions of the world. Because of its increasing adaptability as a successful business strategy, it adapted to the project of local cultural condition, such as in India where cow slaughter is prohibited. They came up with Indian wage and acceptable snacks. Thus, the linear model of modernization is being replaced by liquid differentiation as the McDonald fast food formula interacts with local customs and culture. As a result, a hybrid consumer emerges with a combination of global and local taste. The process, also known as globalization, serves as a significant correction of more general linear models of modernity, and it may also show the variable at which it expands and infiltrating native culture. The term McDonaldization is a metaphor for the modern world's rationalized social process. It is simply to understand how the kind of rationalism dominates many people's lives in practically every way. Indians are no different from others. Here, rationalized systems are not just tolerated but growing in popularity, and they are no longer seen as a means to an end but an end to themselves. India offers an intriguing case study for examining how McDonaldization as a commercial or other process overreach its limit in influencing Indians, converting them into consumers and changing their eating habits, behavior, and consumer culture. McDonaldization, with its rationalization, had amazing success in Indian space, that too in a shorter period, based on the principle of McDonaldization process such as calculability, predictability, efficiency, and control. Although McDonaldization does not represent the entirety of modernity's impact, it appears to be a significant determinant. Consumer culture may not have conceivable without the acceptance of a rationalized mindset, the rise of the food business, and the institutionalization of companies and multinationals. McDonaldization as a process is based on efficiency, calculability, and predictability, besides having control over other enterprises. I would skip this portion and jump to the next topic, McDonald's and McDonaldization in India. McDonald's Corporation was the world's largest food service retailer with over 32,000 local restaurants in 117 countries, where 1.7 million employees serve over 60 million people each day. McDonald's is currently present in over 122 countries throughout the world. It quickly achieved enormous popularity by aggressively exploiting regional sensitivities and propaganda. McDonald was first opened its door in its yeah it opened its first door it opened its door in 1996, making it the 95th country to do so. McDonald's and McDonaldization have been expanding their reach since its inception in India. McDonald's items have been spotted at airports, hotels, colleges, campuses, high school, cafeteria, and other public areas. Other firms in different domains have become McDonaldized, and their influence is spreading to other business in those fields. Nothing and no nation, it is quoted by George Ritzer. Nothing and no nation appears to be safe from McDonaldization. The Indian fast food market is predicted to increase at a CAGR of 18% by 2020, thanks to the growing trend of McDonaldization. By 2020, India's fast food sector is expected to grow by US $27.57 billion. I would skip this portion. The consequence of McDonaldization process can be seen in the dietary habits of Indian adolescents, particularly in metropolitan areas where chocolates, candy, sweetened beverages, Coca-Cola, chips, noodles, and other junk foods are consumed in large quantities. These processed meals are so popular that despite having a lunch box brought to school, these students choose these fast foods, possibly due to their ease of availability, taste, convenience, and customer-friendly packaging. Aggressive and appealing advertising facilitate McDonaldization process, often acting as a crucial trigger, particularly among teenagers. These tactics persuade children that yes, that is high fat, salt, and sugar packaged food is tasty and appealing, attractive outlets, enticing interior, and food processing mechanism as a facet of this contemporary institution promote temptations and an unquenchable want to consume. The process develops an ever increasing appetite for consumption with a main motive of business expansion and profit. While McDonaldization of food waste and the delocalization of the food system challenged and to some extent overthrown a local food habit, increased consumption of prepared and fast food services, and absence of home, which made home cooked meals quite absent. It also affects agriculture and other related areas, resulting in the delocalization of not only food habits but also the entire human system and culture. Quality rationalization, quality at a reasonable price, scheduled employee customer interaction, taste, and generic friendliness have all become emblems of an overly rationalized and homogenized civilization. As a result, McDonaldization is more than just a story about McDonald's. It's a bigger historical and social allegory. It holds that McDonald's, with its efficiency, calculability, predictability, and control, is a suitable model for the forces of modern capitalism that structure both production and consumption.
Sir, one second, sir. Trying to conclude it,
Uh,
sir.
yeah, I would come to hybridity and transformation of citizen into hybrid customer. Hybridity, which comes from the Latin hybrida and refers to the offspring of two different animals or plants, and something with a heterogeneous composition, is used here to emphasize the often overlooked and undervalued customer segregation as the subject, the individual as the subject of the McDonaldization process. While Credit claims that a strategic rhetoric of hybridity portrays hybridity as natural, useful, and desirable, it is only one facet of globalization that portrays its entire process as one of the equal interchange and constructive process. In this sense, hybridity is a non-controversial synonym for globalization in intercultural relation. In the process of McDonaldization, the individual's metamorphosis into a subject which involves being something other than who he is or carrying and how he carries the baggage of mixed ideology is a gradual and planned alteration in his behavior and ideological tendencies as a customer. I would conclude. It's a multifaceted process that encompasses many phases, opinions and ideologies. Apart from producing consumerism, capitalism, and monopolization ideologies, sustaining the principles of globalization, so invasion of local identities and culture, resulting in a hybrid consumer-citizen divide. eh, this process cannot be undermined. McDonaldization's ideology and principles as an economic, social, political process produce a hybrid culture that in the Indian context is questioning citizens' identities in the public domain, converting them into a globalized individual, a shopper, a consumer, and an ideological subject. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. It was really an interesting presentation. And
I missed the PPT actually. It was done very, very well. Yes, PPT
okay,
was
sir.
done very well.
Okay, but still, you did that. Okay, sir. So, like this fast food restaurant was this marginalization in India, particularly in reference to India, it has made a very neat and a very good explanation. And can you list can you give a list of marginalized food items there? It was nice. It was presentation was really nice. Can you give a list of marginalized food items? Because in our tradition, India, we have a very good traditional food, but the youth and our kids, they have forgotten they don't need our modern or our traditional food items. They have a unquenchable thirst for the modern that is marginalized fast food. So could you give the list of the marginalized food items? You said KFC. Can we list this pizza, burger, all those things? Coca-Cola. You gave a long list, okay? So, do you have a list of marginalized food items? Could you hear me, sir?
Yeah. There are a number of writings on this, and this term itself was coined by George Ritzer in his 1993 book, The McDonaldization of Society. And this term is not only restricted to the to the social changes or to the food habits. It is an umbrella term, and it is also related with the religious McDonaldization and the economic McDonaldization, even McDonaldization in of education also. There are a number of papers and books available on these topics. And in my paper actually I listed around 40 research papers or books as the references.
Okay, so it was good. And our society is very much dominated by this fast food restaurant, and the rich people, they go to air-conditioned restaurants, whereas the poor go to the street corners to have to taste all those things. So ultimately, not only on all aspects, they are in need of Western culture, Western right practices, everything. So it was quite interesting to listen to you. And once again, I thank all the participants, all the paper presenters of this third session. And once again, thank you all and stay connected.